Okay. Good morning and welcome to AARP New Hampshire's Coffee and Conversation. I am your host, Karen Ulmer-Dorsch, a volunteer for AARP New Hampshire. And co-hosting with me this morning is Mary Roberge, also an AARP New Hampshire volunteer. Please note that we will be recording today's session. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. In an effort to eliminate background noises, please be sure to mute your line by ensuring your microphone icon has a line through it. However, we'd love to hear from you this morning. So if you would like to ask a question, please use the chat box, which can be accessed by clicking the chat button. Our fellow volunteer, Beverly Cotton, will be monitoring the chat and raising your questions throughout the program. At AARP, we have been promoting the health and well-being of older Americans for over 60 years. In the face of the coronavirus pandemic, AARP is providing information, advocacy, and resources to help older people and those caring for them protect themselves from the virus, prevent it from spreading to others, and cope with the health problems and the financial disruptions caused by the virus. Joining our conversation this morning, is Commissioner Chris Nicolopoulos of the New Hampshire Insurance Department. He was nominated by Governor Sununu and unanimously approved by the New Hampshire Executive Council. Previously, Commissioner Nicolopoulos served as the president and the CEO of the New Hampshire Association of Insurance Agents for 5 years. Prior to that, he was an associate at Pretty Flaherty and Government Affairs Director at the New Hampshire Association of Realtors. Commissioner Nicolopoulos earned his JD from New England Law School and his Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of New Hampshire. Since 2002, he has been licensed to practice law in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and he lives in Bow, New Hampshire. Welcome, Commissioner, and thank you for being with us this morning. Let's jump right in.
Good morning. So do you want me to just start by telling you a little bit about the insurance department?
Mary?
Mary, you're on mute.
Mary has a question, but she's on mute.
Perfect.
I'm sorry about that, Commissioner. Thank you so much for your patience. Okay, so I believe you're going to tell us a little bit about the insurance department and the regulatory role it plays and how it ultimately helps protect us Granite Staters.
Perfect. Thank you, Mary. So I've been at the insurance department now a little less than a year. And even as somebody in the industry, I was amazed at how diverse our expertise is here and how many resources the department has. If you leave this call with one bit of new information, it should be that the department can play an important role for consumers as it relates to their insurance transactions. Our department does a variety of things. The primary function is to license and regulate insurance professionals. And so we license some 80,000 insurance producers who may be anywhere in the United States, but if they want a license to sell insurance to New Hampshire consumers, they need to have an insurance license. And so of those 80,000, maybe 6,000 or 7,000 are actually resident licenses, residents of New Hampshire who are licensed. In addition, there's about an equal number of insurance adjusters, and those are the professionals who help settle claims. Generally, they work for insurance companies, but sometimes they work for consumers. Public adjusters are called, and help insureds who are in a loss situation understand what their rights are under the contracts. So besides the licensees, We also are responsible for ensuring that all companies who have authority to write insurance here in New Hampshire, and there are about 2,080 insurance companies who have who are permitted to write insurance for New Hampshire consumers. And of those, about 70 of them are domiciled here in New Hampshire, which means their home base is here, and they've chosen New Hampshire law as their governing law. And we regulate those companies at every single level of their operation, from reviewing and analyzing their financial statements to make sure that they have the ability to pay claims. We monitor and approve their rating structure. So when a company says we want to sell home insurance here in New Hampshire, and we want to provide credits for certain features of a home and or debits for other features, and those might be, how close they are to a fire department, or whether or not there's a wood stove. And so we have actuaries here who analyze their filings to ensure that those rates are non-discriminatory and that they're based in sound insurance actuarial science. And so those are our core functions for regulating the insurance sellers and the insurance companies. But we also have teams here. We have a team of 7 people who all they focus on are consumer complaints. And those consumer complaints can be anything from, I got a copay for my COVID test, and I understood from the governor's press conference that they shouldn't have a copay or shouldn't have a cost share, to I need experimental back surgery, and my health insurer is telling me that that's not a covered benefit on our plan. And so some of those calls are resolved on the phone when someone calls up and asks for an explanation, and our team of experts will help the consumer understand what kind of insurance terms of arts mean. And others take, weeks, months, or years to resolve in super complicated in cases. Some of those consumer complaints ultimately end up with us as a department doing a market conduct action on a company. So if we have the same complaint several times that we find is justified, the complaint is justified, we may do a deeper dive into a company and ensure that they're complying with our state laws and our consumer protection statutes. The department, because of our kind of broad regulatory authority over licensees and insurance companies, the department can be very effective in kind of cutting through red tape for consumers who don't understand the process. We all pay for insurance for a variety of different things in our lives, but don't think too much of it. I think even myself, I have insurance on my house and car, and it gives me peace of mind. But until you have a loss, you're not thinking about all the kind of iterations of potential hurdles or issues that could arise. And so our department has people here that can assist consumers through those processes. Obviously, all our resources are free. Our entire department is funded by those people we license. And so, consumers don't pay for our resources. And appropriately, each company is assessed a small amount for each policy so that we can have an appropriate regulatory system in place. We are, though New Hampshire is a small state, I think it's an interesting fact that in the United States, New Hampshire only accounts for about 0.4% of all insurance premium. Even with that small number, we're talking, billions of dollars, $10 billion. And another thing that our department does that's probably more interesting than most things we touch is we have a fraud unit. And when people are suspected of committing insurance fraud, either from the insurance company or sometimes from family or friends, they can call up and report potential insurance fraud to our department. And we have a team of investigators that will go out and conduct police level investigations to determine whether or not there's insurance fraud. And those might range from somebody who is collecting workers' comp but working on the side and milking the system, or to somebody who had a suspicious car is stolen and burnt up in the woods in the middle of the night. Those are the kinds of red flags that our fraud team might look at. And every year, more than a dozen cases are referred from our fraud team over to county or state prosecutors, and those cases are prosecuted. And ultimately, what that means is by protecting the insurance companies from these fraudulent claims, consumer rates are better because there's a mechanism in place for the bad actors. I was talking with our fraud team yesterday on a case where, actually, I don't think I can talk about that because it's still going. But they're very interesting. They're very interesting cases. One that we recently dealt with is a gentleman out in the Pelham area who was selling insurance bonds. And so insurance bonds typically are for performance. And so if a contractor gets a contract to put a road in, the town will say, you need a bond for the amount of this road construction project to ensure that you complete it, to ensure that you pay the subcontractors that you're working for. And so if it's $1 million project, you get $1 million bond. An insurance company promises to pay the town, in that case, for if the contractor either fails to do their job or fails to do it right. And those insurance products are more like a guarantee because ultimately the contractor is responsible for whatever money the insurance company pays. And we had a guy in Pelham who was selling fraudulent bonds. So he was representing that there was an insurance company backing these guarantees, and he was collecting premiums from innocent contractors, and municipalities and developers were relying on them. And it was a total scheme. More than $1 million of insurance premiums were paid to him. And that guy was recently convicted of insurance fraud. And so that's a variety of what we do here at the department. And I think it kind of gives you an overview of how detailed our work is.
Next question. You're on mute, Mary.
Okay. What types of insurance does the New Hampshire Insurance Department regulate, Commissioner?
That's great, Karen. So not all insurance. And so there are huge swaths of insurance that are sold in a state that we don't insure. But typically, insurance will fall into two categories. Life and health insurance is one division, and that would include some financial products, annuities, and such. And then property and casualty insurance is the other large bucket of insurance, and that would include cars and houses and buildings. Obviously, there are thousands of different products that insurance companies have created, but all of it we force it all into one of those two buckets. But I think it's important to understand that there's lots of insurance that we don't regulate. We don't regulate ERISA insurance, which is employee-sponsored, multi-state health insurance. And so if Walmart has a health insurance product that it provides to its employees across the nation, it's doing that under federal authority because it would be difficult or impossible for an employer to comply with each state's laws. And so there's a big swath of large employers who we don't regulate. And then there are some medium-sized companies who have self-insured plans, and they may or may not go across state lines, but if they have enough employees, they may have a self-funded insurance product that looks very much like a traditional HMO coverage, but is not covered by New Hampshire law, and so therefore is not regulated directly by the department, even if the company that helps facilitate that product is a New Hampshire licensee. So it would be possible for Anthem or Harvard Pilgrim to underwrite a self-insured product for a company that may not fall under our jurisdiction.
Okay.
And then finally, Medicare and Medicaid insurance isn't covered. That's a federal product that isn't covered by the department.
Okay, let's stop and see if there are any questions. Bev, do you have some questions for us?
We do have some questions. We have a couple of them, and the first one's a really good question, and it's submitted by Richard. And the question is: are prescription drug cards like GoodRx and such considered insurance, or are they outside of the insurance world? Do you know how the money side of those cards work and who pays money to whom? Why would pharmacies participate in those cards?
That is a good question. I actually don't know that all of those products are insurance. I think a lot of them are consumer access and consolidation products. And so if as a company I decide I'm going to negotiate with all of the pharmacies that I can get in my network to provide better rates on insurance in bulk, and ultimately provide more consumers to a pharmacy in return for discounts. That's why they participate, is that they're looking for the volume. But I suspect, and Ariane, correct me if I'm wrong, but I suspect that those are not regulated insurance products. I got a nod.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, those are not regulated insurance products. So there's a variety of different types of programs and assistance. And we have a PDF that's a little bit old on our website that I can put here in the chat if people want to take a look at the different programs. But they're not insurance, and they're not insurance regulated.
So are you saying then that either the pharmacy or the store, it's sort of a come on from either the pharmacy or the store, and that they're giving you a deal on this thing over here to get you in to be purchasing other things at normal pricing?
No, I don't think it's bait and switch. I think it's, and it's not a doorbuster either. It's not, we'll get you in to get the cheap eggs so that you buy the milk and the potato chips. I think it's prescription drugs are such that if you have a lot of volume, you can negotiate better rates. And we've seen that across the nation, and we've heard our president talk about negotiating across the nation for prescription buying. And I think when networks are bigger and they're able to have more consumers buying from them, they get better rates. And like it or not, there's markup in prescription drugs. That's why there's a Walgreens or Brooks or CVS, I guess I'm dating myself, on every corner. And so I don't think, I think any program that helps you access discounts, provided that it's financially viable, is something that should be considered, whether or not it's an insurance product or not. But that's going to be very fact specific on what prescriptions you're taking, whether or not you take enough of them to justify the membership.
And so another question that you option, your insurance world is outside of the Medicare world. So I'm not sure if the next question is relevant to you, but I'm going to put it out there for you anyway, in case you have any insight into it.
Sure.
And it is, why is there a penalty for not signing up for Part D of insurance, which is a prescription drug coverage, at age 65 if it was not needed then? And then why is it a monthly thing for the rest of your life?
This is not my world.
Yeah.
But the reason that exists is because insurance works the best when the largest group of people participate, even when they don't need it. If you only needed to buy insurance when it was time to go to the doctor or when you had a need, it would be more expensive. There's been there's a lot of talk about pre-existing conditions and ensuring that insurance is always available whether or not you have a pre-existing condition. And in fact, that it's, pre-existing conditions, a 4-letter word in most of the world. What insurance companies are trying to do is stop people from, going to the doctor, having the doctor say, we need to look at this potential growth, this cancer that you have. And the person turns around and says, oh, time to go buy an insurance plan. I'm happy to pay $1,000 now because I know that I need it. Insurance works better when we spread the risk of those people who currently aren't needing it and the kind of life cycle of the kind of inevitability at some point we are going to need it. And so that's why that exists, is they don't want you timing your need.
That's
Because
sort of
if you time it, it should be more expensive.
yes, that's the kind of the logic, but behind the individual mandate
It is.
in the marketplace was, if you're only insuring sick people, then that's a problem for the insurance companies. If you're only insuring people who get in car accidents, then that's going to be a problem. So I get that. But thank you for shining some light on that, even though it's not particularly under your purview. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great.
And that's all the questions we have right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Bev. Commissioner, what about Medicare? Is there any information on your website regarding Medicare?
I'm looking at you, Ariane. I know there are some resources there. Again, it's not.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
I'm talking about supplement plans. Is that something that the insurance department gets involved in?
It is. We do regulate supplement plans here in New Hampshire, and I'm sure in a minute Ariane's going to attach a link to our latest resource, which helps you compare the costs of the plans for 2021. We here at the department have the benefit of collecting all the data from all the companies, and so we're able to put that together for consumers in a way that allows them to look at that. Nice job, Ariane. In a way for consumers to better understand the options and the differences in the plans. And any of the links that she puts in here are available on our website. And so that after this call, if you're looking for that information, if you just search Google for New Hampshire Insurance Department, we will be right there, and you can click through all the resources that are there. And there are lots of them.
If you would, Commissioner, please share some telltale signs of potential insurance fraud and misrepresentation, along with tips of how listeners can protect themselves.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of bad actors in the insurance space and in lots of insurance and business spaces. I get a call every week letting me know that that I could get a rebate on my Medicare on my cell phone every single week, or sometimes multiple times, trying to get me to click a button and give them personal information so that they can market to me. And so I think number one is unsolicited calls, unsolicited letters, emails, you should be wary of to start with. You know who your insurance agents are. Medicare doesn't reach out to you by phone. And so if you understand at first that those contacts are promotional, some of them are informational, some of them are have good products and people with integrity. But I think the more that it smells like a scheme or a sales or a high pressure sales, the quicker you should be to get off those calls. There are lots of different frauds that are related to insurance, and it may be that they're looking for your specific information so that they can file fraudulent claims. It may be that they're looking for your information so that they can sell it to high pressure marketing folks. Other telltale signs of suspicious activity are any entity that purports to be the federal government. you know, I also get the call saying that my taxes are overdue and they're going to arrest me, or the IRS doesn't do that. They send you if you owe the money, they send you a bill. And so when they're reaching out to you, when they're creating urgency, you know, almost nothing other than timelines for open enrollment, almost nothing we're doing is urgent. When they're asking for you to pay in Apple gift cards or Target gift cards or in cash, you know, almost no insurance transaction these days are done in cash. When they're pressuring you to make a decision fast, I think that's scary. I spent 5 years working with independent agents here in New Hampshire. I ran the Independent Agent Association, and there are a lot of amazing resources to insurance consumers to get competitive pricing, both on health and on P&C sides. And I trust the guy on my main street in my town to be able to market my insurance products. It gives you someone to call when you have that question, when you wonder if something's a claim or not. It helps you make sure that you're competitive in the marketplace, allows you to plan for your insurance inspections, choose appropriate coverages or appropriate deductibles for your financial kind of comfort. And so I think proactively choosing your own experts to support you is critical.
Great. Thank you. So Commissioner, are there any specific laws or regulations to help protect seniors in regard to insurance or insurance fraud?
There are. We have laws in New Hampshire. We have lots of laws for fraud anyway, but we have some specific laws to protect the seniors here in New Hampshire. And if you're in a situation where you think that you potentially are a victim of fraud, or even that you've been, someone's reached out to you and has sold a story that seems questionable, call our consumer division. Internally here, our consumer division will know how to get that to either enforcement or fraud, or which would be our two divisions. If they're licensees, we'd go in enforcement. If it's some other fraud, we would investigate that. It doesn't take very long to do, but I think if you're kind of acute enough to be aware of a potential fraud, you may protect somebody else.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go to the last question, do we have any more questions, Bev, from you? Bev, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I believe the commissioner just answered it, but I'm gonna restate the question. How do you find these experts to help us seniors?
It depends. That's a great question, because it isn't always the same. If you have questions about the health insurance or the exchange, there are resources there for that. If you're looking for insurance products here in the state, there are a multitude. Like I said, 7,000 insurance licensees here in the state, and virtually all insurance agents work on a commission base. So you're able to have an interaction with them, get quotes without having to make a financial commitment to them. You can compare it to what you have. And I think, it's not on fraud, but having a discussion with an expert regarding what's appropriate levels of coverage for yourself is probably as important a discussion to have than the discussion on fraud. People's financial kind of risk tolerance for an accident or for a loss are vastly different. And people's potential liability, given what their lifestyle is also different. In New Hampshire, it's an interesting state that we live in, because auto insurance isn't required. Only state in the nation where you don't need to purchase auto insurance. And despite that, we have auto insurance rates, percentage of our cars on the road insured, are up with the top top 15, I believe. So you don't have to have it. And then if you do get it, they can't sell you anything less than what's called 2550, which is very low, very, very low coverage. And I think in some cases, people see a commercial and says, oh, we can save 15% in 15 minutes or 20% in 10 minutes, whatever the new buzzword is. And they sometimes don't have the discussion with an expert about what's appropriate for me. I have a close friend who called me a couple of weeks ago because his personal umbrella that was $4 million got canceled. And he appropriately needed a $4 million umbrella. Runs a big business, has lots of potential liability, and has lots of assets. And so he had to work with his independent agent and get replacement coverage for his, for the risk that he had in operating his business and living his life. And making sure you have those right coverages. It may be that it's appropriate for you to have flood insurance on your residence or your apartment or condo. And if you happen to be in a situation where you don't have a mortgage that's mandating that you have it, having a discussion with an independent agent about those coverages, I can assure you, is easier to do before the loss than after. Every year, we have fraud complaints by people who take out the spare car that wasn't insured and have an accident and get the car back home and call their insurance company and put insurance on the car, and several weeks later put their claim in. Say, oh, geez, I backed into the telephone pole. And I'm sure some of those get paid. I'm sure some of those people get away with it. But on occasion, the adjuster who comes out notices a little bit of surface rust. That's peculiar for a car that just got in an accident today. And if that gets referred to our fraud unit does things like subpoenas your cell phone records to see that you called the tow truck 3 weeks before you put the claim in. And those are crimes. And people think, oh, it's just insurance and nobody will ever know. But what I'm asking is have those discussions with your insurance agents ahead of time. Make sure that you have appropriate coverage because you can't do it later.
Okay, Commissioner. Unscrupulous agents have been known to single out older adults who may be vulnerable to high-pressure tactics or misleading sales pitches. What can our listeners do if they suspect that they may have been a target of such practices?
Stop. I'm a lawyer by training, and I've spent a lot of years giving people advice, both paid and free. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've sent somebody into the world and said, whatever you do, don't sign anything. If you're, you're contemplating a transaction, you're looking at a car, looking at insurance product, you're looking at a settlement, don't sign anything. Wait, send it to me, and take a breath. I think that is the critical defense for protecting all consumers, not just elderly consumers, but all or senior consumers. I think stopping, talking to your experts, talking to your lawyer, your family, and say, this is the situation that I've been offered. Does it make sense? Again, almost nothing is time-sensitive critical. And so don't let them make a bad decision for you because of a tactic. I saw a case that came in here where a consumer was convinced to buy a $2 million annuity product. And the annuity product was unique in that it could never, ever be surrendered. Under no circumstances could that person liquidate the annuity forever. And in the product that he was sold and he signed, it did have a following statement that said, you understand this product is illiquid, period. And if you got to that sentence, I'm not sure most people would understand what that meant. And there are experts out there, when you're making big financial decisions or even small financial decisions, taking time and making sure that somebody has had a clean, fresh a set of eyes on it is imperative. Nobody likes a high pressure salesman. It's easy. Just hang up, move on.
Great. Thank you. Beth, are there any more questions in the chat?
There are. The person who asked earlier about how to find experts to help us seniors, they added to that, such as car or homeowner insurance coverage. Who can one trust? And I'd like to add a second question to that. Is there, I mean, obviously when you call an insurance company, then that company is going to try to sell you their insurance. Is there a broader, such as you folks putting, some of those helpful price comparative sheets and so forth out there for Medicare supplements? Are there sort of places that don't have the skin in the game, I guess, that a private insurer would, to help folks muddle through those decisions?
Yes, there are. So individual insurance companies can provide you their product. And so we all know what those are. We see the commercial, State Farm, Geico. If you call them, even Liberty Mutual Direct, you see the commercials for the EMU or whatever. Those are companies that are going to only offer you coverage with their companies. And I'll concede that those companies will have a variety of different options. They're going to offer you $2,550, $250, $500, $100, $300. They're going to offer you a variety of different deductibles potentially. And they're going to use different rating structures to determine what risk you pose. And that will result in premiums for each of those different classes of coverage. I'm a big advocate of using an independent agent. And that's somebody who sells insurance for lots of companies. Almost always they're Main Street, downtown agents. So that's the guy downtown next to the gas station or the law firm. And they're as big as, say, Cross Insurance, which is one of the biggest in the state. But the other names, Davison Tolles and Foy's, and lots of insurance agents who just have their name. And those agents, if they're independent agents, they're going to sell products for a variety of companies. And the reason that's important is because for certain classes of people, different companies are more competitive. And so if you're a 25-year-old with lots of speeding tickets and a DUI, and you need an SR22 insurance, which is insurance for people who are high risk and have had a driving under the influence, almost every insurance company doesn't want to write you. So your best rate is going to be, there's a company who kind of specializes in that, a big national company who has a big program, and they have a good metric for rating those high risk losses. And so that if you went to 50 independent agents, they would send that person, the 25-year-old with a bad driving record and a DUI, they would all end up at the same big insurance company. But for seniors, there are companies who rate adversely for age. As drivers get older, the actuaries will say that they're more likely to be in an at-fault accident. And so different companies factor that differently. And so if a company's profile is such that they want less of the older driver risk, they may charge a higher premium on that, where another company is willing to say, wait a minute, this person's been on the road for 50 years and they haven't had a at-fault accident in forever. No, we'll take that risk every day over somebody in their sports car. And The rating structure is very different at each company because they've developed their own ideas on how to get the best risk. What they're all trying to figure out how much premium they can charge for the potential risk and liability that any policyholder brings. And some do it better than others. Some make mistakes and they think a certain class of people is a better risk than they are. And in time that changes and you'll see that they change their rates. So it's worthwhile to get an independent review of your insurance and to make sure that you still have the best product for you. Have you updated the fact that you no longer commute to work? Have you updated the fact that you're driving less miles every year? Factors that will impact your rates significantly.
And we also have another question. If insurance is through another state, but an issue with a New Hampshire medical facility occurs, should both states be involved?
It depends. It depends what the issue is and who's triggering the issue. So if a New Hampshire resident happens to work in Massachusetts and has Blue Cross in Massachusetts and goes to a doctor here in New Hampshire and has an issue, they certainly can call our consumer division, and our consumer division will determine whether or not that falls under our purview. And it will be fact specific based on what the trigger is, or whether it falls under the purview of another state's consumer division. If it falls under another state's consumer division, we will connect you. We don't just send you off into the world. We can help make sure that the case gets referred to an appropriate person so that you're not starting over again.
Right. Thank you. And I noticed that there's another some phone numbers and another website that's been put in the chat by Tiffany. And people can copy and paste those into a Word document or something. And also we're recording so that you can get them after the call as well. So those are all the questions that we have for now.
Great. Thank you, Bev. And thank you, Commissioner, for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. It's been very interesting, and I certainly have found it helpful. Thank you to our, go ahead.
I appreciate it. And Ariane, why don't we cut and paste our links, and we'll send that over to Jeannie and let her have them. So if she needs to get them out to people.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. This was a nice way to spend my morning.
Yeah, and that's a great idea. I think everybody will certainly appreciate getting that information. And I want to thank our audience also for joining us for today's Coffee and Conversation. AARP New Hampshire has many other events, so please sure to check our website at aarp.org/New Hampshire often, because we are continuing to have more online programs such as live cooking demonstrations, yoga, and actually more coffee and conversations. So be well, everyone. And I am going to stop the recording now just to let everybody know.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much.